Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're going to talk about everything productivity, organization as a UGC creator, which sometimes can be overlooked, but once you really start to get serious about UGC, it's quite key to get organized. So, I'm going to share my tips from my personal experience, the personal tools that I use, and hopefully, I can help all of you become more productive, maybe save some time, and hopefully this way you can be even more professional in your day-to-day as a UGC creator. My name is Etha. I'm Twirl's community manager. I make sure that the creators on our platform feel supported, that they feel like they can rely on someone, and also I make sure I share all of my knowledge with the community. So if you ever have any questions, I'm always available on email or on Slack. And yeah, that's my role. That's why I host these webinars. There's other webinars as well I've hosted. You can always find them on the Twirl website as well. We've covered editing, how to get jobs on Twirl, and a bunch of more things. I'm also a creator, so that means that everything that I know, I will communicate to you guys. And you can find a blog that I wrote myself as part of Twirl, and it's called the UGC Diaries. If you scan that right there, you can find literally everything I know. It's a free resource. I know there's a lot of paid resources out there, but we wanted to keep it free. And you can find everything from how to script videos to different types of strategies for making UGC that converts to just tips as a creator. It can be a bit overwhelming how much information is out there. So that's you can find that in the UGC diaries. And if you're not part of Twirl, you can also scan the code and you can join our platform. And then we also have the QR code to a Notion template that I will be going through in this presentation. It might sound kind of obvious, but staying organized will probably lead to you being more productive. Really, it's a bit of logic, but the truth is that most creators actually lose productivity, and not because they're lazy, but because they're literally scattered all over the place. So, this is why I want to emphasize organization is so key. And yeah, most of us keep ideas on the Notes app, on briefs on email. We keep invoices in random folders. And when the clients comes to us and asks for something, it sometimes takes us like so much time to find whatever. So the biggest challenge of creators is not coming up with fresh ideas and making content that actually works. It's actually juggling the million parts that are the UGC bubble that you might live in. So, projects, deadlines, revisions, invoices. That's why organization is not really a nice to have. It's directly tied to how productive you are and how good you're going to perform as a creator. So, everything ideally should live in one central hub, maximum two, that you just refer to all the time. This way, you won't be wasting any energy searching for different things in your day to day, chasing different emails, remembering what's next. When everything lives in our head, that means like you're most likely going to forget a lot of things. And also, you will probably be really stressed and anxious just simply because you will think you're going to forget something. So, everything should be in one hub. We're going to go through this in the presentation. The hub could be whatever works for you, but we will be covering Notion today. Um, but yeah, so choose one, pick one, stick to it. Think of organization as the foundation that supports your creativity. It lets you plan ahead with clarity. It allows you to manage timelines without the stress. And then also, it will eventually lead to building stronger relationships with clients because you're seen as reliable and professional when you're organized. And it will not only give you peace of mind, but it will give your clients peace of mind. So if you can really free up that space in your brain and focus more time on creating, then that means that the quality of your work will also increase, and that will mean that your clients will keep coming back. So yeah, organization is not just a cliche, is actually a key pillar in your UGC business or in your UGC career. How do we stay organized? Because staying organized sounds amazing, but how do we actually get it done? Because the real test comes when you get multiple projects at the same time. When you have a handful, it all seems manageable in your head. But when you don't and you start building up the number of projects, you will see that you start struggling. And one brand might want the draft tomorrow, the other one is chasing your revision, someone else is waiting for your invoice. And if you don't have a clear system, you will start to forget things. So here's how I make it manageable for myself. And this is, I'm talking everything about on personal experience. So it might not work for everyone, but it's what works for me. And it really does allow me to just focus on creating rather than stressing about everything. What I use is Notion. But you could use Trello, you could use Google Sheets, generally whatever works. Just make sure you stick to it, to be honest. And the rule is to always stick to it. Just whatever happens every day, go back to it and keep noting everything that you do and everything that happens on your day to day. This could be done in different ways. I will talk about the method that works for me. And the other thing that I would honestly stress is batch planning and just batching in general. What this means as UGC creators particularly would be make sure you tie tasks together, specifically filming. If you can batch film, you will save yourself so much time because usually the things that are going to eat up at your time are things like setting up the space, getting ready, adjusting the equipment. And if you can save yourself from doing that every single day and just focus on filming, for example, 1 or 2 days a week, then you will free up so much time for other things such as admin, which is honestly is so important as well. And if you save more time for your admin and your client communications, that means that that aspect of your day to day will also increase because you won't be mixing filming with emails with everything. You will just do, let's say, Monday, I'm filming, Tuesday, I'm editing. This can also change week to week, but just make sure that you take some time, maybe at the beginning of the week, to plan what you're doing every day that week. And here comes two little habits that actually are so useful to me. And is that if anything is under 2 minutes, do it. Do it in the moment. If it can take you less than 2 minutes, it's actually better to just do it in the moment that rather than noting it. It's going to save you so much mental load and it will actually keep things moving a bit faster. And the other thing would be to check your deadlines and your project management system once a week at least instead of every day. So make sure at the beginning of the week, for example, or at the end, you plan the next few days ahead instead of just planning on the day, what am I going to do? Make sure you have a clear structure of how your week is looking like. This way, you can also just have a more calm mind and know that you don't have a scattered week. You have a very clear plan that you're going to follow. This, I'm going to actually show you how I do it in the Notion board that we're going to go through. You can see there's a little QR code, it's the same one as at the beginning. And you will be able to, it will take you to the Notion template that I have created, where basically you can deal with everything in one. That's how it looks like. Obviously, it's very basic. You can jazz it up as much as you want. You can make it follow your own style and even like colors that you like. But what you need to take away from this is the structure. First of all, at the top, you will find a to do list. This is tying back to what I was saying before of organizing your week ahead. So if you can plan at least roughly what you're doing every single day, this will at least give you some sense of structure. You can always change tasks like dragging them whenever you need to change them. If you haven't been able to finish them, that's okay. But at least come into the week knowing what's on your plate. Very self-explanatory, Monday to Friday, not much. Even the weekends, if you film on the weekends and you have a full-time job, you could even divide this in a Saturday and Sunday, whatever works. The next thing I have on here is sales funnel, which if you get deals, especially outside of Twirl, not so much on Twirl, you might have potential clients in the pipeline, but that you don't know if they're gonna be a client yet. So for me, it helps me to have a note on here, maybe considering that I have to reach out in the next few days if they don't get back to me, or just some clients might tell you, reach out to me in November. So you can just make a note here and say, client X, reach out again in November. This way is a reminder and you don't have to think about it again. You just put it on here and it's just one less thing of your brain. And the other thing would be other to-dos. I use this section mostly to include anything that comes to my mind that maybe I can do next week or things I don't have the availability to do this week but really need to be done. I would just pop them in there and then you can always drag them when you're, oh, like that. You drag them when you're ready to the day that you think you're going to be able to do it. And this is my favorite part, and something I genuinely would not be able to live without as a creator. For those new to Notion, which I know it can be a bit confusing, but Notion has databases such as this one here, and you can make different views of the same database. This might not make much sense yet. It might mean, I hope it makes sense once I explain the whole Notion board. But basically, this is a database, and essentially all of my projects live here. So if I get a new project, I will just add a new one. I'll say, I don't know, like Garnier, and then you can add all the details of that product, such as the month, maybe imagine it's June, and I'm getting 120 pounds for it. And then I got the sale on Twirl, for example. Then you will just save that information right there. And then the beauty of this tracker is that when you have more than a handful of projects, you will have no idea what stage everything is at. And with this, you can simply just drag them. You can also do this on Trello, I believe, and there's other kind of softwares that you can do it as well. But what I like about Notion is you can do this and many other things as well. But yeah, whatever works, just find a way of classifying your projects and make sure you can move them, and make sure it's simple enough that you're not wasting all of your time on just modifying the database. Make sure it's something easy. So this is great, especially if you don't know, you can just go here. You're like, okay, what am I doing today? I'm kind of lost. You just go here, see, okay, this project is in editing stage. I need to edit this project. And then, for example, I have under review, which is great as well to keep track things that have not been approved yet, but they still not closed. And then completed and paid, I make them different just so that I can track what's completed but not paid yet. So I know exactly what to chase if it hasn't been paid yet. And then paid, you can also make this one invisible. You can just hide it from here, because then if you start adding loads of things, it will just become really long. You don't need that there, but for explanation purposes, there it is. And yeah, if you press here, you can just hide it. But yeah, this will essentially, at a super quick glimpse, always give you an idea of what's going on in your UGC timeline. And I also added an income tracker. If you do prefer to also add income here, you can. I also will share an income expense like sheet later, so you can do that separately if you prefer. But if not, this is good if you want to just put some quick numbers here to have an idea of what you're making every month. And we also have the same time is the same database as this one, but you can see it in different like ways. So this one would be just a simple list of all the projects. You can also add it from at the project from here, and because they are the same database, what this means is that whatever you add to one will be reflected in the other one as well. So the Garnier project I just added here, it will appear also here, even though I didn't add anything to this one. The other way I also set it up for everyone, hopefully they can be helpful for you, but you can do it however you want, is by month. So I find this helpful, especially for counting how much I've made. You can simply see all the projects you've done in June, all the projects you're going to do in September, for example. And then you can also, like, this is not in the right order, so you can just like move them around if you need to. And then another one that maybe a lot of creators haven't thought about is having pre-written responses for emails. This I will talk about how to make emails more efficient in the later slides, but essentially in my Notion, I will keep responses for things that come up all the time. This could be anything like accepting a gifted offer, not accepting a gifted offer. Basically, if a brand is confused about what you do, you also have a response for that. So you don't have to be writing that down every single time an email comes through. This will save you so much time. I haven't written my own, but you can just complete this with whatever works for you. And this way, when you get an email, you just have to copy and paste, maybe modify a couple words, couple sentences, things like this. And then another one I added, I don't use this one as much, but if you pitch to brands a lot, then you can also have some specific ideas for hair care specific brands, for example, or for health foods, things like that, that you can just refer back to when you have a new pitch coming up, for example. So that's on Notion. Hopefully that's a bit clear to everyone, because it can be a bit confusing if you've never used it before, but you can create a copy of that, and you can just play around with it, see what works for you and what doesn't work. Now we're going to talk about email. This is kind of a boring topic, but it's honestly where so many creators lose clients. And it's not because you don't deliver good content, it's because if you miss messages, reply late, or just simply are a bad replier, brands won't like that. And you are essentially providing a service, so you have to consider that you have to come across as professional. You have to be on top of your emails. And the trick is to set up a super simple folder, nothing crazy. Literally four folders where you just have to get into the habit of categorizing the emails that come to your inbox. So, for example, this is the ones I use. Again, if something else works, you can also add another folder that works for you, whatever. But to keep it simple, sometimes simple is better. I just have a folder for interested clients. This is someone who has reached out or replied to me positively, showing some interest. It's kind of like the warm leads list. And it also just makes it easy to send follow ups because when a client doesn't get back to you, doesn't mean they're not interested. It might just mean that they're busy. Your email might have just gotten buried in their inbox. So it's important to reach out again. So, for example, for the interested folder, I set time every single week to go through it and follow up with every single person on there that hasn't gotten back to me in 3 to 5 days. And then whoever hasn't become responsive in maybe 3 emails, I will just put them in the churned folder, which essentially means sleeping, dead, just not responding. Then we have working, which is all the active projects. Every single brand that you're currently creating for should live in here so that nothing slips through the cracks. Completed, also kind of self explanatory, anything you've delivered. And that kind of also serves as a tracker of your projects, what you've been working on. And then we have churned, which is kind of who hasn't responded or whoever just said no. But it's important to keep them there as well because these leads are not dead. They're just sleeping. So what that means is that you could always reach out in the future to them with some ideas that you have, and they could convert into actual paying clients because maybe it just wasn't a good time the first time you reached out. So these are still contacts that are beneficial for you to keep. And knowing who has said no is as important as knowing who you've already worked with. And again, pro tip, just make sure you answer within 24 hours if you can. If you're not in office, set an out of office email. If you are working on something, but let's say it won't be ready till 3 days, don't just leave them on red. Tell them, got it, like I'll get back to you, or working on it, receive, let them know you are aware that the email came through and that you're working on that. Don't just let them imagining whether you got the email or not. And similar to that, it comes response time is that you will not have the time to answer to everything unless you really work on those canned responses or example responses. So if you want to make sure you're on top of your clients' communications, you're going to have to use AI, use those responses, make sure you really clearly know what you're responding to everything, and just reply as quick as you can if you can. And make sure you try to keep every brand communication thread in the same email chain so nothing gets lost, because that's another thing. If you have three different chains for the same collaboration, it might just get messy. And finally, files, because emails are important, but so are files. So if you don't want to waste hours searching for briefs, contracts, old content, the bigger your client list grows, this will become also more complicated. So just make sure you set up a Google Drive system that works for you. And again, keep it simple. Maybe just make a folder for each brand. And inside that, you can have some subfolders, contracts, maybe with the contract you've shared with the brand or the contract that the brand has sent to you. Make sure you keep the invoice in there. You can also have a different folder for all the invoices, however works. But just make sure you add them and you actually keep on track of these systems that you're setting into place. Don't just say I'm gonna do it and then not, because then it will become messy. It's worth the extra time of creating that very structured Google Drive, one folder per client. Because then clients will come back and then you already have a folder with the past briefs. You will see the past content you've produced for them. You can come back to them and be like, hey, following up on XYZ that I did last time. when you work on a lot of things, these things, you will forget these things. So just make sure you have everything in one folder if you can. And finally, we have finances, which we already had a webinar about accounting, but that didn't really touch on how to actually keep them organized. I do have another template for you on you can scan the QR code. It's a very simple Google Sheet, but just make sure you keep it updated. Make sure you note who's paid, who hasn't. It's so important because you will just forget that the client that you worked for 2 months ago hasn't paid you yet. So if you want to avoid that and avoid being stressed all the time, also knowing how much you've been earning, that can also get messy. So just make sure you really update this sheet. Try to go on it at least once a week if you're regularly getting projects. Even more than that, every time you issue an invoice, make sure you put it in here. And again, always use the same template. Make it on Google Drive or on Canva. It keeps things consistent. Make sure you number them correctly. It just will keep you from duplicating projects and not finding things. And if you are going to use the income tracker, just make sure you update it. Don't let it build. Just put it every time you get something new. It's gonna be messy. And again, with expenses, you should be doing the same. Every time you buy something for the business, new phone, new subscription, make sure you have an expense sheet as well that you update. Again, set aside time every week if necessary, every 3 days, and go back to it and make this one of your tasks every single day. And maybe once a month you can do a chase day where you just, because you will be so organized and have everything so nicely set out, you will know exactly who hasn't paid you, for example, or what you need to follow up on. And then it will become so easy for you to say, okay, client ABC, I need to chase. And this will save you, again, millions of headaches and stress, especially financial stress. You have to start thinking that this is your business and this is your full-time job. So see it as that. Might not be your full-time job, but if it's not your full-time job, you have to be even more serious because then you have even more things going on. But yeah, this is your business. So treat it as such. Have a bit of financial control. Make sure you update it. Um, yeah, and again, the invoice tracker is pretty simple, self-explanatory. I'm not going to go through it. It's just a very basic, simple Excel sheet, but use it. And if you don't use this one, use another one. You can also use Notion for that. This is why I said I use two systems. I use this Google Sheets, and then I use my Notion. And everything that is my UGC related thoughts, they live in one of these places. So that's most of the tips that I have. Obviously, could dive for hours onto these. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful and not too confusing.